Nick Sohn, Chief Customer Officer at Brennan, and welcome back to another Executive Insights. Today, I'm joined by our founder and managing director, Dave Stevens. Thanks for joining me, Dave.
Good to be here, Nick.
Hey, Dave, we hear a lot about innovation, and I want to try and cut through a bit of the noise and get your take on it. But what do you think about operational innovation?
Yeah, really interesting topic, actually, and one that's super close to my heart. We've got a very tight process around operational innovation, continuous improvement, all of those sorts of, words ring true for us. And I think it's one of the most underrated ways of bringing, operational excellence, great customer outcomes, increasing in efficiency, aka profitability as well, into a company. And they don't have to be really big ticket items.
Yeah, look, I think operational innovation is very important. And as you say, it's a lot of little things. So what are your tricks and tips for how to prioritize?
Yeah, really good question. So one of the main things that you need to do in order to operate, in order to innovate, your operations, is to really understand what hurts you the most and how often it hurts you. So you've got to be collecting data about this. And we collect data around customer insights, customer sentiment, detractors in our NPS scoring. We do the same thing from our staff. And we look for, we treat that fleet of devices that we manage out there. We collect the data from it. We understand which devices are working, which devices aren't working properly. And at the end of the day, it's a big correlation game for us. So we're looking for patterns in the data where, multiple customers are complaining about the same thing, or multiple CIs or devices out there are, having the same kind of error, and we track back the root cause of that. Then we think about a solution for it. And when you're correlating that much data, and we're taking tens of thousands of data points a month, you get a very clear list of what's hurting you the most and how often is it hurting. And it's a pretty straightforward kind of stack ranking exercise after that.
Yeah, look, I think that is a good way to go about it. I did want to ask a related question. So that's operational innovation, and you're solving, the biggest problems first. How do you balance that with long-term strategic planning?
Yeah, and this is where they two really kind of weave in together, in that there's a lot of things that you can't necessarily solve at the root cause immediately. And what you might need to do is put one or two Band-Aid fixes in place that are temporary until you go through some sort of more strategic innovation. If we think back, say, 10 or 15 years ago, more likely, we had a homegrown service desk where we would, log tickets and, do the management of those tickets. And when we found root causes to fix, we could only fix so much. We really needed to move to something like ServiceNow, which we did about 10 years ago, to give us the platform to then truly fix the root cause, of the things that were hurting us the most. But that strategic decision became super easy to make because we knew that there was a backlog of things that we would immediately improve, or that we would immediately start improving as soon as we had ServiceNow live. So it wasn't just a like-for-like replacement. It wasn't some sort of pie-in-the-sky ROI that surrounded the investment. We knew exactly what we were going to get, how we were going to improve in the years after moving. And all of that came true. It takes years, 5 years, 10 years to get through, the full backlog and the full list, but you get there in the end. And we see the benefits come forward in terms of efficiency, profitability. We're able to adjust our pricing in market to be more competitive. Our staff no longer have to deal with the same problems over and over. Client NPS goes up because they don't have to deal with those same problems. It really is quite very impactful.
Yeah, so if I summarise what I think I've heard, that you take a long-term strategic view and then you break it down into backlog type items, which gives you the operational efficiency in chunks that you can do every quarter or every month and try to get small benefits incrementally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So once you understand the root cause and the planned actions, you can often group them into projects or, a card on a Kanban that might progress through a quarter or a month. And we might run 5 projects simultaneously to improve and they might address 5, root causes each. But there are hundreds to address.
Yeah, and we are often talking, Brennan, about micro-innovation, which, I think goes a little bit of the way to some of the issues that you're talking about here. How do you think about micro-innovation?
Yeah, and we do think about that. Look, one of the things, an anecdotal story to share about micro-innovation, and it's probably 7 or 8 years ago, but we had made the move to ServiceNow, so, we're on the right platform. But we're having customers... SSID or the security certificates expiring every day, one or two a day. Many of those certificates were unknown to us, unknown to the customer. Someone had installed them on a website, but regardless, they would expire and the website would go down, or Wi-Fi would go down, or a key application, whatever it would be. And we realised that this was hurting us very badly. It was hurting our customers really badly. Again, not all our fault, but we felt obliged to fix it. So we identified that as as the root cause, that we didn't know where all the certificates were and their expiry details, and we went about launching a project to essentially buy a piece of software to walk our customers' network, discover where they were, log them in a database, and then put a workflow around. Hey, Mr. Customer, this certificate's expiring in 30 days. Click here to renew. It's expiring in 5 days, click to renew. Whoops, it's expiring today. We've renewed it for you. Here's the invoice, outage averted. And we went from hundreds of outages a year to 1 a year is about the average now. So a very small piece of innovation that you wouldn't write home to mum about necessarily. It's not going to make, the Harvard Business Review, but it made such a massive change. We could see efficiency pick up, customer NPS pick up. The team were visibly more, happier. They didn't have to live in a world where P1s were firing off regularly. Just, had a really big impact in our business.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting example. I think if we went back a few years and went and thought about digital transformation, that would be part of what Brennan's done to transform its own environment.
Yes, exactly.
Right, and you've broken it all the way down to a micro innovation and a series of micro innovations that have given us a digital transformation and a really good outcome for us and for our customers.
Yep.
So I want to switch gears a little bit and think about, from our customers' point of view, their digital transformation. We see a lot of projects that go wrong. We see a lot of customers and others in the market investing lots and lots of money in digital transformation projects that are unsuccessful ultimately or do not realise the benefit. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's lots of reasons why that happens, but there's a few pretty common reasons. So failed digital transformations often start at the scoping stage. So when we did that ServiceNow transformation, for example, for us it was all about, we knew we had to modernise platform and get a more secure platform, et cetera, and they were all just kind of ticket to play items. There was no ROI in that apart from the avoidance of risk and those sorts of sensible decisions. But what really drove the investment was this backlog of things that we really couldn't fix properly until that platform, existed or an equivalent. And we had a ready-made ROI. We knew how often those things were hurting us, how much money it cost every time they occurred, and it's easy to just do a pretty straightforward calculation to work out what the expected benefits should be. And these are business benefits. It's not about, the benefit isn't that I've now got a platform where I can record, that has a CMDB where I can record the certificate details, for our customers. That's no one's benefit. The benefit is that I avoid the outage that not understanding about the certificate occurs. So when you're planning your backlog, you've got to understand what business benefits are going to be derived and how you'll measure them. And we went from, hundreds of outages a year to 1. And that, was considered a success. And we were able to work out the economic benefit of that to us and our customers. And, having a backlog of 100 or 200 of those things, it's not hard then to, create a scope of business outcomes that needs to be delivered by your partner of choice. And the outcome isn't that I get a new CRM system installed or that I get a new ITSM system. It's that I solve these business problems. So if we keep that at the centre of the scoping exercise and the user acceptance testing at the end of it, then you'll get a much better outcome. And the other one is scope control too. So you've got to make sure that as the project's in flight, that as new requirements, business outcomes become apparent, that you're using change control, change requests, and to really nail that down, both to protect the finances of the project, and its elapsed time and all those other things, but also to make sure that each of those additional business benefits has been signed off by the leadership of the customer. They often come out of at the department level, it'd be great if we could have this. But that can often have massive impacts in terms of, cost and timing, and the project can just wander off track if change isn't controlled. And they're the two biggest items.
That's a good point, Dave. And I want to drill down a bit more into this scope control, because I think that's a really important part of getting these digital projects right. We at Brennan have recently started to offer our customers fixed price, fixed outcome projects. And part of that is to ensure that together with our customers, we are really tightly managing the scope. I would like to take your view on our fixed price, fixed scope work.
Look, it's a really important offering, and what it does is that it gives customer certainty. It means that the ROI that they submitted to their board and got signed off, should by all accounts be achievable. And we put our neck on the block to that commitment, and so does the customer. And what it does is that it means that both parties, both are working together to make sure that that scope is right in the first instance and then protected through the delivery of the project. So when we get, very good ideas coming from, the various departments within the customer, we can acknowledge that they're great ideas, but that they go into a backlog or some sort of phase two, and that we keep our eye on the prize, which is most often, some kind of minimum viable product that delivers a set of benefits that are tangible, where the customer then gets a taste for the fact that they can invest in digital transformation, get the outcomes that they want, prove the investment to the board, and there's always a phase two that comes along, because investment is the name of the game. It's not about just modernising platforms and, retiring risk registers and things like that. It's about taking steps forward for customers. And we think this is the right way to do that.
Yeah, look, let me just pick up on the ROI, return on investment. You're the MD of our company, and to also speak to many of our customers. How important is it that we track and prove the ROI for these projects?
I think it's incredibly important both for the stakeholders inside the company, our customer, and also for us. So for us, it's about proving out that, we're a good value partner and that we, true to our word, delivered on the outcomes that we promised. For the stakeholder inside the customer, it's about proving that they engaged a good quality partner who, delivers. And then for the economic buyers inside, it's about, proving up to the board that we made an investment, we're getting a return, we're seeing the monthly cost drop or the monthly sales increase. And, that's a really virtuous trust circle. Once it's established, it's then much easier to get board approval for phase two and phase three. And the investments often get larger and, and broader in their application. But the way you go about it, the process can't change. It can't be, okay, we've got a success, now let's go into some sort of really wide-ranging team engagement that might go on for 5 years. I say keep them tight, keep them smaller focused projects, keep them fixed price, and, let's prove up at the end of every single one that we got what we wanted to get.
Yeah, I think that's a really good advice. And I think having that step in there at a small end of a small series of work to prove the ROI and make sure that it's still on track will go a long way to helping digital transformation get its reputation back for being beneficial.
Yeah, there's all sorts of reasons why these projects go off the rails. Are often super visible, large companies, large government departments, And yeah, I agree. I think it's a trust game, and it's a game of, defined investment and defined return. It can't be a lot simpler than that.
Yep. Okay. So let me ask a final question of you, Dave. Thinking about the future, okay, and from the lens of Brennan and from our customers, what do you think is the biggest opportunity, but also the biggest risk as companies think about their optimizing their sort of digital transformation landscape?
I think for each company, it's going to be different. And I think before you go on some sort of digital transformation journey, it's really important to understand why is this occurring? And, what's the backlog items that we're retiring here? What are the business outcomes that we're going to achieve? And, there are finite benefits to be gained as well. So you might go on an operational innovation journey, and it's a law of diminishing returns. In the end, you get that good operationally that, you can't bring millions of dollars to bear on a digital transformation project and expect to get the same return as the first one that you rolled out. So I think, companies have got to take there's product innovation to think about. There's kind of service delivery innovation. There's operational innovation. And we talk about operational innovation today, but, I think as the markets expand, as, the GDP picks up, as the general economic tailwinds pick up, customers start thinking about product innovation. How can I make my product more attractive? How can I sell more? How can I go into new markets? So balancing, all the different innovation types in your company is the real opportunity. And to answer short, the risk is that you just continue ploughing money into one type of innovation for a diminishing return.
Yeah, so I think maybe in summarising, that really comes back to strategy and making sure that you're not just setting a strategy and forgetting about it, but continually revisiting it for the reasons that you just discussed.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why, my opinion is the CIO should be member of the ELT in all customers. And, we often find that the best outcomes come from when the CIO is plugged into that ELT, can really understand where the business is going next. And often that's, the IT investments come, 18 months, 2 years before the actual strategy gets brought to bear, in the public eye. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Dave.
Pleasure. Good to be here.
Thanks for joining us for another Executive Insights. See you next time.